What would you do if someone walked into your home, rummaged through your belongings, and acted like they had every right to be there? That's exactly what happened to me a few weeks ago. And trust me, it was worse than you think. Being the police chief of this town comes with a lot of responsibilities, but even I need a break sometimes. Leading a department, handling emergencies, and making sure the community stays safe is a job I love, but it never stops. That's why I make it a point to take at least one day to myself when I can. A day with no paperwork, no emergencies, just me, the water, and my pride and joy, the Intrepid. She's a beauty. A yacht that took me years of hard work to afford, a testament to every sleepless night, every case I closed, every difficult decision I've ever had to make. Owning her isn't just about luxury, it's about what she represents. And on that particular Saturday, all I wanted was to spend the morning enjoying the sun and giving her the care she deserved. I had just finished waxing the starboard side, the hull gleaming in the bright morning light, when I decided to head below deck for a cold drink. The marina was peaceful, just the way I liked it. The distant hum of boats, the occasional laugh from other docked sailors, it was familiar, calming. I locked the main cabin door behind me, out of habit more than concern, and made my way down to the galley. I spent the next hour unwinding, flipping through an old boating magazine, sipping my drink, and occasionally popping my head above deck to wave at familiar faces. It's a small town, and when you're the police chief, people recognize you. Some just gave me a nod, others struck up quick conversations about town politics, upcoming events, or the latest gossip. Nothing unusual. Until I noticed something was wrong. The salon door was ajar. I always keep it closed, always. My stomach tightened, the hairs on my arms rising with that instinctual feeling that something wasn't right. At first, I told myself it was probably just the wind or maybe I had left it slightly open without realizing. But deep down, I knew better. I moved silently, my years of training kicking in, stepping lightly as I made my way up the stairs, my pulse steady but alert. This was my yacht, my space, and yet something felt off. And then I saw her. Standing there on my deck, rummaging through my toolbox as if she owned the place, was none other than Brooke Davenport. My mind raced. Why was she here? Why was she going through my things? But more importantly, what the hell did she think she was doing? Brooke didn't notice me at first. She was too busy rummaging through my toolbox, her manicured fingers sifting through wrenches, screwdrivers, and other equipment like she was searching for buried treasure. Her expression was one of mild frustration, as if she were inconvenienced by the lack of whatever she was looking for. I took a step closer, keeping my voice even. "Brooke." She jumped, her shoulders snapping back as she spun around, clutching something in her hand. For a split second, I saw her mask slip, her face twisted in raw shock and guilt, but then, just as quickly, she smoothed it over with a smile. A practiced smile. The kind of smile people like her use to get out of trouble. "Oh, Malcolm. You startled me." She let out a forced laugh, pressing a hand to her chest like she was some helpless debutante in a bad soap opera. "I was just admiring your yacht. It really is stunning." She was acting like I had invited her here, like she hadn't just been caught snooping through my things on private property. I folded my arms, my voice steady but firm. "Admiring it, huh? With your hands inside my toolbox?" Her eyes flicked to the toolbox, then back to me, her smile straining at the edges. She was already scrambling for a way out. "Oh, well, you see, I thought I saw something shiny. Maybe a piece of jewelry, something that fell off another boat. I was just trying to be a good Samaritan." I raised an eyebrow. "A good Samaritan? On my locked yacht?" She let out another laugh, this one more nervous, more forced. "Well, I mean, not locked, right?" The door was open. I took a slow step forward. She was lying. I knew it, and she knew I knew it. But she wasn't ready to give up just yet. Not Brooke Davenport. I glanced down at her hand, and that's when I saw them. My yacht keys. I didn't even have to ask, her fingers tightened around them, her knuckles turning white. She was panicking now. "Those keys in your hand, Brooke," I said, keeping my voice controlled. "Are they mine?" For the first time, her mask cracked. Her breathing hitched, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. She was weighing her options. And then, just like that, I saw it in her eyes. The shift. The entitlement, the audacity, the sheer nerve of someone who has always been told the rules don't apply to them. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and in an instant, she made a choice. She started screaming. "Help! Help! He's attacking me!" Her voice pierced the air, a high-pitched, manufactured shriek of pure distress. She staggered backward dramatically, clutching her chest as if I had laid a hand on her. I hadn't moved. But that didn't matter. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking just enough to make it look real. She dialed 911 right in front of me. I stood frozen, watching in stunned disbelief as she played out a role she had clearly perfected. "Please," she sobbed into the phone, her voice trembling with calculated fear. "There's a black man on my boat, he's trying to steal it. He won't let me leave. I'm so scared. Please hurry." I felt my heart slam against my ribs, but my face stayed unreadable. I had seen this tactic before. I had seen it weaponized against men like me far too many times. She clutched the keys in her hand as if they were hers. I pulled out my phone, hitting record. If she was going to play this game, I was going to make sure the whole world saw her do it. Her gaze flickered to my phone, and for a second, just a second, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of me. Fear of being exposed. But then she doubled down, her voice growing louder, more desperate. She wanted people to hear. She wanted witnesses. "I'm at the marina," she sobbed to the dispatcher. He's dangerous. He won't let me go." I could hear the dispatcher trying to calm her down, asking for a description. Brooke's breath hitched as she spat out her next words, venom laced beneath her trembling tone. "He's black." I closed my eyes for the briefest moment. There it was. The dagger. She could have described my height. My clothes. Anything. But she led with that. Because she knew exactly what kind of reaction it would provoke. A few seconds later, I heard the dispatcher confirming that officers were en route. Brooke lowered her phone, smirking just enough for me to catch it. A tiny, flickering moment of triumph. She truly believed she had won. And that's what made my blood boil the most. I stayed still, my phone still recording. Because I knew the truth would come out. I just hoped that when the officers arrived, they would listen. The marina, once peaceful, had turned into a stage. Brooke Davenport was front and center, giving the performance of her life. The sirens were coming. I could hear them in the distance, growing louder with every second. The flashing lights were probably reflecting off the water by now, cutting through the golden afternoon sun. Brooke, still clutching my yacht keys like they were her birthright, took a step back, her face twisted into a perfect mask of terror and outrage. "You're going to regret this," she hissed under her breath, just low enough that only I could hear. The wailing sirens seemed to fuel her arrogance. I didn't move. I didn't respond. I didn't take the bait. Because that's exactly what she wanted. Instead, I kept my phone trained on her, capturing everything, the way her breath steadied the moment she thought no one was watching, the way her fingers curled tighter around the keys, the way she glanced toward the approaching patrol cars with smug anticipation. She thought she had won. A few feet away, the marina worker who had spoken up earlier stood frozen, watching everything unfold. His hands were clenched at his sides, jaw tight. He had seen this before, I had seen this before. And yet, it still burned. The first police cruiser screeched to a halt at the dock entrance. Two officers stepped out, Harper and Ramirez, solid men. I knew them well. I had trained them. And yet, as I stood there, watching them take in the scene before them, I wondered, how much did that really matter, Brooke wasted no time. She sprinted toward them with a performance so flawless that it would have put an award-winning actress to shame. "Officers," she cried, her voice raw, desperate. "Thank God you're here." Harper and Ramirez exchanged a look before turning to her, their faces carefully unreadable. "Ma'am," Harper said, keeping his voice professional, "we received a call about a disturbance. Can you tell us what happened?" Brooke took a shuddering breath, her shoulders trembling with the weight of her false fear. "This man," she began, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at me, "was trying to steal my yacht. When I caught him, he got aggressive, he wouldn't let me leave." She let out a choked sob. "I was so scared. I thought he was going to hurt me." I could see it in Harper's face, the moment of hesitation, the calculation. Not because he believed her, but because he knew that under different circumstances, with different officers, this would have already gone a very different way. Ramirez glanced at me, his brows knitting together slightly. "Sir, can you give us your side of the story?" I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "I own this yacht. Brooke was trespassing on my property, and when I caught her, she tried to steal my keys. When she realized she was caught, she called 911 and fabricated this entire story." Harper's gaze flickered to the keys in her hand. "Ma'am, those keys, do they belong to you?" Brooke went still. For a fraction of a second, I saw it, that moment of realization that her plan wasn't going the way she expected. But she wasn't ready to back down. Not yet. Instead, she shifted gears. She played the next card in her deck, the one she had been keeping just in case. Her face hardened, her tears vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. "You don't believe me, do you?" she whispered. Harper remained silent. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and then, in a voice thick with venom, she said, "Do you have any idea who my husband is?" There it was. The power move. The veiled threat wrapped in privilege, the expectation that her name, her wealth, her connections would make this disappear. I watched Harper's jaw tighten. "Ma'am," he said, his voice measured, "we're just trying to get the facts straight." Brooke let out a humorless laugh. "The facts are that this thug broke onto my boat and tried to intimidate me. And if you two don't handle this correctly, I promise you, you won't have jobs by the end of the week." I didn't flinch. Neither did Harper or Ramirez. But Brooke? She wasn't finished. She reached into her handbag, pulling out a thick stack of neatly folded $100 bills. It happened so fast, so smoothly, that it took a second for the full weight of what she was doing to hit me. She held the cash out to Ramirez first. "Look," she said, her voice dripping with frustration, "this is all just a big misunderstanding. Why don't we make this whole thing go away?" Silence. Ramirez didn't move. Harper didn't move. The marina worker didn't move. I sure as hell didn't move. For the first time since this whole mess started, Brooke looked nervous. Harper exhaled slowly, his shoulders stiff. His voice, when he spoke, was ice cold. "Ma'am, are you attempting to bribe a law enforcement officer?" Brooke's lips parted, she had overplayed her hand, and she knew it, Her fingers snapped closed around the money, and she yanked her arm back, shaking her head wildly. "No. No, of course not. I was just trying to fix this." "You're twisting my words." Ramirez took a step closer. "I'd advise you to stop talking, ma'am." Brooke was unraveling, the panic was setting in now, seeping past the layers of entitlement she had wrapped herself in. She took a step back, her hands trembling, then she reached for one final, desperate move. Her voice went sharp, high-pitched. I'm having a panic attack." She gasped, clutching her chest like she couldn't breathe. I need an ambulance. Someone, help." I saw it. I saw the way she threw herself into it, hoping, praying, that the distraction would be enough to slip her cuffs, to run, to buy herself just a few more moments of control. But she had run out of control. Harper and Ramirez weren't buying it. And neither was I. I stepped forward, my voice calm but commanding. "Let's cut the act, Brooke." For the first time since this started, she looked truly afraid. Because she knew. It was over. The act was over. Brooke had spent years perfecting the art of manipulation, but she was out of cards to play. The fake tears had dried up, the screaming had lost its bite, and her privilege, the very thing she had relied on to twist reality in her favor, was slipping through her fingers like sand. Officer Harper took a measured step forward, his stance firm. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay where you are." Brooke froze. For a second, she looked ready to bolt, but there was nowhere to run. Her eyes darted between Harper and Ramirez, then flickered to me. I could see the calculations running behind them. Would she double down? Try one more desperate lie? Or... No. She wasn't going to surrender that easily. Brooke Davenport wasn't built to accept defeat. She squared her shoulders, inhaled sharply, and did what entitled people do best, ***, she turned the blame around, ***. "This is harassment," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I'm the victim here, and you're treating me like a criminal? I'll have all of your jobs for this." Harper didn't flinch. "Ma'am, you were found trespassing on a private yacht with the owner's keys in your possession. We have more than enough cause for detainment." Brooke's lips curled, her eyes darkening as she let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, I see what's happening," she sneered, her voice dropping into something sharp and dangerous. "This is some political stunt, isn't it? Malcolm Carter wants to play the hero, and you too, what? You're just his puppets?" I exhaled slowly, watching as she unraveled, her mask completely gone now. Officer Ramirez, who had been watching her closely, spoke up. "Chief," he said, looking at me. "Would you mind showing us the yacht's security footage?" Brooke visibly stiffened. I nodded, already stepping toward the cabin entrance. Not at all. I didn't have to look at her to know she was panicking. The footage didn't lie. Inside the main cabin, I pulled up the security system on the yacht's control panel, my fingers moving quickly across the touchscreen as Harper and Ramirez leaned in. The screen flickered, and then, there it was, clear as day. The footage showed Brooke sneaking onto the yacht, looking around cautiously before heading straight for the toolbox. There was no hesitation, no sign of confusion. She knew exactly what she was doing. The camera caught her rummaging through my things, pocketing the keys, and then turning to leave before I caught her in the act. There was no denying it. Officer Ramirez let out a low breath. Harper shook his head. Behind them, Brooke went deathly silent. I turned slowly, meeting her wide-eyed stare. Her skin had gone pale, her mouth slightly open, as if she were still grasping for a way out. Harper cleared his throat, his voice cold. "Ma'am, this video clearly contradicts your statement. You knowingly filed a false police report, falsely accused a law enforcement officer of a crime, and were caught attempting to steal property that did not belong to you." Brooke's hands trembled at her sides. She wasn't used to this, she wasn't used to people calling her out, much less holding her accountable. She tried one last time. I didn't mean," her voice cracked, desperate now. It was just a misunderstanding. Harper's jaw tightened. Is that your official statement, ma'am? Brooke floundered, her breathing shallow. The walls were closing in. I didn't know it was his boat, she stammered, tripping over her words now, her confidence gone. I thought it belonged to someone else. Ramirez crossed his arms. Then why did you call 911 and claim it was your property being stolen? She had no answer for that. Her eyes darted toward me, a flash of something almost pleading behind them. For a moment, it looked like she might actually beg. Then she snapped. Her expression twisted into something ugly, raw with rage and disbelief. You don't get it, she hissed. I can't be arrested. My husband is on the town council. You idiots have no idea who you're messing with. Harper pulled out his handcuffs. Ma'am, turn around. Brooke staggered back. No, you can't. You can't do this to me. But they could. And they did. Harper grabbed her arm firmly, turning her around as he secured the cuffs around her wrists. Brooke let out a shriek, her entire body shaking. You can't. You're making a mistake. My husband will have all of you fired. Officer Ramirez gave her a deadpan look. Your husband isn't here, ma'am. And even if he were, it wouldn't change a damn thing. The reality finally sank in. Brooke screamed, thrashed, tried every last thing in her arsenal, but none of it worked. She was arrested, right there on the dock, in full view of a growing crowd of onlookers. Some people watched in shock. Others whispered to each other, shaking their heads. But a few, a few had smiles creeping onto their faces, because justice, for once, was being served. As the officers led her toward the waiting patrol car, Brooke's eyes snapped back to me. Her rage was boiling over now, her voice pure venom. You'll regret this, Malcolm Carter, she spat. I swear to God, you'll regret this. I met her glare head-on. Unmoved. Unshaken, No, Brooke, I said, my voice calm, final. You will. The fallout was swift and brutal. Brooke Davenport had spent her life believing she was untouchable. She had moved through the world with an air of superiority, certain that her wealth, connections, and privilege would always protect her. But this time, there was no escaping the truth. The security footage made its rounds through the town, spreading like wildfire. People who once idolized her social status now whispered behind her back, shaking their heads in disgust. The news picked up the story, turning Brooke from a respected councilman's wife into a symbol of entitled arrogance and racial bias. And just when she thought things couldn't get any worse, her husband released a public statement. Richard Davenport, desperate to salvage his own reputation, announced his resignation from the town council and filed for divorce. He distanced himself from his wife, insisting that he had no prior knowledge of her actions, a blatant lie, considering the frantic phone calls he had made that day, trying to shut the investigation down. But it didn't matter. He did what powerful men do when the ship starts sinking, he saved himself first. Brooke was left with nothing. Her social circle abandoned her, her name became a joke in town, and her lawyers couldn't spin her way out of this one. When the charges were finalized, she pled guilty to filing a false police report, attempted theft, and committing a hate crime. The judge handed down a suspended sentence, a hefty fine, and court-ordered community service at the very center where she once looked down on people who weren't in her social class. Weeks later, I received a letter from her. It was long, rambling, filled with half-baked excuses and weak justifications. She blamed stress, said she wasn't thinking clearly, and insisted she had never meant to hurt anyone. Not once did she take full responsibility. I read it, then tossed it in the trash. Because this was never about an apology. This was about accountability, something people like Brooke had never faced before. And for once, the system had worked. But the truth is, this wasn't just about Brooke. It was about a system that allows people like her to manipulate the truth, weaponize privilege, and turn the justice system into their personal plaything. It was about how easily one lie could have destroyed my life if I hadn't been the police chief, if the officers who arrived hadn't known me personally, if the evidence hadn't been in my favor. I was lucky. But how many others hadn't been? How many lives had been ruined by a false accusation, a fabricated story, a woman like Brooke who knew exactly how to play the game? And how many more will there be? What do you think? Should Brooke's punishment have been harsher? Or was justice truly served? Let me know your thoughts below.